You are listening to the Awcast, the most awesome wrestling podcast you've listened to in the past few seconds. Hello, my awesome friends, and welcome to Aftershock Wrestling Entertainment Podcast, or as I like to call it, the Awcast. I'm Brant, and like you, I'm a wrestling fan. So let's talk about some wrestling. All right, so this episode, this inaugural relaunching episode, is all about WrestleMania 38, leading up to it with Smackdown and NXT Stand Deliver, and following it with the Raw After Wrestlemania. So we're going to talk about all of that. Before we get into that, please like, share, and subscribe at the Awcast across social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And you can check out all podcasts. That's awepodcast.com. Takes you right to the YouTube channel for now. And I'll talk more about the newsletter you can subscribe to and all that good stuff later on in the show. But I just wanted to get that out of the way. So let's get into some WrestleMania talk. And we're going to start with WrestleMania Smackdown. So the only thing I really have to say about this show, and this is, of course, the go-home show before WrestleMania, before all the events of WrestleMania weekend. And I think right after Smackdown was when the Hall of Fame happened. I did not watch the Hall of Fame. I did see clips here and there, Undertaker's speech, the Steiners, which I think is really cool. I'll be talking about them a little bit more later. Yeah, so we'll be talking about that. But starting with SmackDown, interesting thing about SmackDown is two matches that you would think would be on the kickoff shows for WrestleMania took place on SmackDown. That is the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and the Intercontinental title match. So the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal doesn't need to be on the main card, right? So it's really a platform to propel superstars that need like that extra thing to make them stand out. This extra thing that they can latch onto their name. Oh, the winner of the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal kind of gives them that edge that they can use to carry themselves to the next level, like Baron Corbin. So this year, Madcap Moss is the winner. The interesting thing is who he eliminated, which was Finn Balor. It came down to those two, and he eliminated them. Now, other superstars that were in it were superstars that were not on the WrestleMania card, like the Viking Raiders, Tozawa, Reggie, R-Truth, Shanky, and Commander Aziz, and Apollo Crews, I think, was in it. Other competitors like that. And so, why didn't you have it on the pre-show? Then we have the Intercontinental title match, which is Ricochet defending against both of the Los Lotharios, Humberto and Garza, and he defeats them. Kudos to Ricochet. Congrats on the win. I'm just curious, again, why this isn't on a kickoff show. And the thing about it is, there were no matches on the kickoff shows. You had 4 hours worth of kickoff shows combining Saturday and Sunday nights, and there was not a single match on either one. And I get them not being on the main card. Those two nights were stacked. 4 hours of content each night, so 8 hours of a WrestleMania. And maybe they didn't want to exhaust the audience, but it seems weird that these superstars were relegated, and these big matches that are typically synonymous with WrestleMania were relegated to SmackDown. And there wasn't even a U.S. title match. So it's a little confusing why they didn't put something on the kickoff show. They could have taken both of these matches and put one on each night, just have one match to kind of, lead into WrestleMania. But they chose not to do that for whatever reason. So the only other thing I'll say about SmackDown is that Finn Balor wrestles twice on this show. He wrestles in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal and loses to Madcap in the final two. And then he comes back and teams with Shinsuke and Rick Boogs, I believe, against Austin Theory and the Usos in the main event and loses. More on Finn later. Okay, so Finn was not at WrestleMania. This was his WrestleMania moment. It was WrestleMania Smackdown. Your United States champion, Finn Balor, very decorated champion, first ever Universal champion, not on WrestleMania. Okay, we'll circle back to that. So that was WrestleMania Smackdown, and now we get into NXT Stand and Deliver. So this took place Saturday afternoon. I think it was 12 p.m. Eastern time, so it was 11 a.m. my time as I watched this. And they did have a kickoff show or a pre-show, and Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez, who are back together, defeated Toxic Attraction and became your women's tag team champions, NXT women's tag team champions. So that's cool. I did not see the pre-show, but I did see the clips on the main show, and they talked about that. So speaking of women, we had the NXT Women's Championship match on NXT Stand and Deliver. It was later on in the night, day, I guess. It was later on in the event. But we had Mandy Rose, who is the champion, defending against Cora Jade, Io Shirai, and Kaylee Ray. And my question is something that Cora Jade does not want to hear anymore, according to Twitter. Is she ready for this spotlight? And she's still a little green, right? She's young. She's still learning. There were some missteps here and there. There were some with Braun Breaker as well. We'll talk about that later. But all in all, I think it was a good showing. I don't think the Destroyer on the apron is indicative of being ready, but it was really cool that she pulled it off. It shows some skills, some control, mostly on the part of Kaylee Ray, but still impressive move. And Cora Jade has the people in the palm of her hand. She's got it. She's got something. She's got that extra thing. I love her to death. I don't know. I'm kind of glad she didn't win the title just yet, but I do see her as kind of and I can make this comparison with Braun Breaker too. To a degree, we'll talk about that when we come to Raw, but I could see her having that kind of journey like Randy Orton, where Randy Orton got the title really young and he wasn't ready for it, and he didn't even really know who he was as a competitor yet, not fully, and it was a short reign, lost it, found himself, and now is one of the most decorated champions of all time, right? So I could see Cora Jade on that journey. But I think she's at that stage where Randy Orton was when he was in Evolution. He's just not quite ready, but he's almost there. You know what I mean? So anyway, it was a great match. When you put Io Shirai in a match, you're going to have beautiful sequences and everything. Kaylee Ray is really good in a different way. She's a very different style. And you had 4 completely different styles here. You had quintessential wrestler or sports entertainer with Mandy Rose. You had high-flying, skillful action with Io. You had this brawler mentality with Kaylee Ray, and then you had this spunky, I'm going to pull out everything I can with Cora Jade. So you had 4 very contrasting styles. It was a solid match. Mandy Rose successfully defended her title, so she is still your NXT Women's Champion, unlike her compatriots in Toxic Attraction, who lost their titles, Gigi Dolan and JC Jane. Unfortunately for them. And speaking of great matches, this next match stole the entire show of NXT Stand and Deliver. That is the ladder match for the North American Championship. It was a 5-way ladder match. Carmelo Hayes defending his title against 4 other guys, including Cameron Grimes and Santos Escobar from Legado del Fantasma. You had a bunch of people around ringside. You had Grayson Waller's bodyguard. You had the other members of Legado del Fantasma there. Elektra Lopez was there. So much going on, but the spots were insane. Grayson Waller, it looked like he freaking broke his arm as he crashed through the ladder trying to do an elbow drop. Obviously, with a ladder match, you have a lot of false finishes. Almost there, can't quite get there, but ultimately, Cameron Grimes pulled out that win, and it was beautiful. And much to the chagrin of Carmelo, who did miss this time around, unfortunately, but he usually doesn't. And all 5 of these guys were phenomenal, and all 5 of them deserved to be there. And if this had been on WrestleMania, it would have stole the show, whatever night it was on. This was a phenomenal match. Absolutely. Best match of NXT Stand and Deliver, hands down. And that's not to take away from any of the other matches. We had a great showing in the tag team match, which I think was a 4-way with MSK pulling out and finally getting their titles back. MSK is always fun to watch. So all those guys with those contrasting styles as well put on a great show. Tommaso Ciampa can't go through NXT Stand and Deliver without mentioning Tommaso Ciampa. Had a match against Tony D'Angelo, kind of passed the torch to him, and in the aftermath, he got standing O. Triple H came out and hugged him, and went face to face with him as Tommaso heads off to the main roster. But here's my question about that, and this is something that has bugged me for a while with NXT, and I don't understand it. And it's that anytime somebody leaves NXT to go to the main roster, they lose. It's usually a champion, and they usually drop the title, which it makes sense that they would not carry the title with them to NXT. Kevin Owens was that exception, right? He showed up on Raw with the NXT title, challenged John Cena, and had a great match. But this was it's a weird practice to me to lose your match when you're going out on top and you're called up to the main roster. Why would you lose? That doesn't make logical sense to me, and I know I'm trying to make logical sense out of WWE booking, and apologies there, but that is the truth. Yeah, it's a little strange that you would have them lose before they elevate. It doesn't make sense to me. I understand passing the torch and everything, but there's a way to do that without every single person exiting NXT losing. Just my thoughts, my personal opinion on that. Take it for what you will. But we also had Gunther, who is in the best shape of his life. I prefer Walter, but his name was Gunther, however you pronounce it now. And he looked fantastic. He had a solid match with LA Knight. Not the best match of either one of these guys, but it was a solid showing with Gunther coming out on top. And then you have Braun Breaker. Braun Breaker challenging for his former glory with the NXT Championship against Dolph Ziggler, who pulls out the tricks, has Robert Roode at ringside, pulls the turnbuckle pad off, and Braun Breaker loses. And there were a couple little missteps, a little inexperience showing through with Braun, but overall he's really good. They refer to him as Rick Steiner's son, which I thought was fantastic, and I'm like, I wonder if they'll do this once he's like on the main roster. If he shows up on Raw or whatever, are they gonna reference that? Are they gonna show that he is actually a Steiner? And more on that when we get to the Raw portion. But I'm thankful that they did mention it here, that he is Rick Steiner's son, and he made his name for himself on his own. But there's no denying that man is a Steiner. He sounds like Scott, wrestles like Rick. I mean, just. He's fantastic, and he's a star in the making. I made the comparison with Randy Orton and Cora Jade earlier. You can make the same comparison here. Braun Breaker got that title really early on in his NXT run and lost it really early in his title run. And he knows who he is, though. That's the one difference. He really knows who he is. There's nothing changing that. You just got to get more experience, more ring time under his belt. And he's going to be a huge star. He's a future Universal Unified World Champion, whatever they're going to call that title. That's his future. I think he's that good. He's just not quite there yet. And unfortunately, this day was not his day. But that's NXT Stand and Deliver. Again, the standout match was that ladder match. It was just amazing to watch. Ladder matches are always a spectacle, but when you get 5 super talented wrestlers or performers in that ring and they're pulling off spots with great fluidity, great timing, and building a story throughout the whole thing, and it's not so obvious, oh, they're setting this up for that. That's when those matches really, really stand out, and this is one of those. These guys are going to all go to that next level, I think. All 5 of these guys have that potential. So that's NXT Stand and Deliver.
Hey, do you like podcasts? Do you like comic books? Do you like podcasts about comic books? Then you should go check out Comic Book Weekly, Comic Frontline's podcast where we share our top 5 comics of the week, talk about the latest news in the comic industry, interact live with our viewers each and every Tuesday night at 10:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Check us out at youtube.com/comicfrontline or search for Comic Book Weekly on YouTube.
And let's move on to WrestleMania Saturday, night 1 of this most stupendous 2-night WrestleMania in history, or however they describe it. So before I get into that, again, I want to remind you to go like, share, and subscribe to the Allcast, at the Allcast across social media, allpodcast.com. And if you'd like to sign up for our newsletter, you can do that here. You will get a free fan AEW comic by creator Todd Black just for signing up and getting on that mailing list. And it's a really cool comic if you are an AEW fan. And so check that out. And now getting into WrestleMania Saturday, night one of WrestleMania. The big main event of this one was, of course, the Stone Cold Kevin Owens thing. We'll circle back to that. I do want to send thoughts out to Rick Boogs, who got hurt in his match. I forget the exact technical term. I think it was a quadricep patella tear. And so basically his quadricep or his thigh muscle tore off of his kneecap, I think is what happened. So similar to what Triple H, Kevin Nash, Vince McMahon have all suffered, I think. I don't know if it's quite as severe as theirs or not. I don't know how long he's going to be out, but well wishes to a speedy recovery for Mr. Boogs there. And in that match, Usos retained their Smackdown tag titles, so kudos to them. A great weekend for the Bloodline, for sure, except for, of course, Solo, who they don't reference as an Uso or part of the Bloodline. He was in that ladder match on NXT Stand and Deliver, but he was really good in that too. And I can't wait to see him come up to the main roster and join his brothers and his cousin in the Bloodline. I think that would be really cool. I think that's the next evolution for him, for his character. We'll see. I know he tweeted out stuff like got to make some changes or something. Who knows what those changes might be? Let's watch SmackDown this week and see if maybe they fast track him. Who knows? You never know, right? But anyway, let's get back to WrestleMania. I want to address this. So The Miz and Logan Paul fighting the Mysterios, right? And there's a lot of stuff going on Twitter, social media about Logan Paul. Now, I'm not a Logan Paul fan. I think some of the things that dude has done are downright despicable and disgusting. But that's neither here nor there. That's my personal opinion. But what I will say is that Logan Paul has taken his time to learn the craft of professional wrestling. And I assume ever since he started showing up that he's been training, he's been, honing his skills to be able to put up a good showing on WrestleMania, much akin to like Bad Bunny or even Snooki several years back had a match and had a great showing. Maria Menounos, different celebrities that have come in, some don't put all that work in and it shows, but some do. And when they do, it really shows. And I think Logan Paul showed some skill here, showed some ring acumen, if you will. Now, I know there's some talk about him no-selling here and there, and I'm going to defend the guy, honestly, because I think that when you're new in this and you're green, that you don't always have that where you feel you don't always realize that you're not exaggerating enough, you're not showing enough, you're not selling enough. In the moment, I think you're in your head maybe a little bit, trying to make sure you know what you're doing next and all of that. And I don't think it was intentional no-selling on his part. I really don't. I think he was trying his best. I think he tried to sell the skull-crushing finale at the end from The Miz, and he was like holding his head and stuff, and he didn't push it over the top like he should have. He should have been out, right? And but I think that you can chalk that up to inexperience. I don't think that was arrogance. I don't think you can attribute that to what you feel personally about Mr. Paul. I think that was just inexperience, plain and simple. So I thought it was a really good showing from Logan Paul, and all four of these guys put on a solid match. As good of a match with a celebrity coming in, learning the ropes as you can expect, maybe even better than you can expect, honestly. So I will give credit where credit's due. Logan Paul impressed me a little bit in this match, but I'm very curious to see why Miz turned on him. I don't understand the direction of that, especially if Miz is still a heel, unless they're trying to make Logan Paul a face, which kind of makes sense considering the trepidation between the two when Miz was trashing Cleveland. Interesting direction to go with that, considering the public opinion of the Paul brothers. So we'll see where that goes. Maybe they'll address it on Monday Night Raw. Maybe not. We'll talk about that later. But so going on from that, we had one of the best matches on the card, which was Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair pulling all the stops. Apparently, Bianca got a black eye from this. I did not notice this happening in the match, but obviously on Raw, her eye is messed up. But she got her redemption. She got justice for that 26-second loss at SummerSlam and took it to the man, as she was once known. And but both of these women pulled out all the stops. Becky Lynch hit the manhandle, I think, at one point. The KOD was attempted several times. Once she finally nailed her with it, it was over. These two are two of the best in the business right now. I can't say enough good things about Bianca Belair. She has impressed me so much. She's so athletic. She's charming. She's got that personality on the mic. She's fire. Even on NXT, when she would come out and when there was that whole thing with Rhea and Charlotte, and they were kind of pushing her to the side, she wouldn't accept that, and that's kind of like her whole personality. She's not going to take the corner, right? You don't put Bianca in a corner. She's going to stand out there in front, show out and show off, and I love it. And now she is your Raw Women's Champion, well deserved, and hats off to her. And incredible weekend for Bianca Belair. We'll compare that to the other women's match, which was the SmackDown Women's title, which was Charlotte and Ronda Rousey, which was the penultimate match of the evening. It was better than I expected it to be, honestly. Ronda Rousey, I think, is still trying to find her footing in a WWE ring. She's learning. She's getting more skilled. She needs to kind of slow down and I'm critiquing. I'm armchair quarterbacking here, as it were. I've never been in a wrestling ring. I can't speak to that. She is a professional fighter. She knows better than I do. But I, just as a spectator, I will say that sometimes if she could slow down and just feel the moment a little bit, that it would engage the crowd a little bit more. I think that's one problem when you go out there and you're super realistic with your fighting. Sometimes it's easy to miss it in a wrestling ring because we're used to things slowed down and exaggerated, right? And sometimes with her repertoire, it comes across like that. It comes across so fast and so rapid that you don't really know what happened. And so just slow down and enjoy the moment. Maybe some of it was nerves. It was WrestleMania. It was a world title match. But all in all, it was a pretty good match. Bianca and Becky, a little above it. But it is what it is. The outcome was surprising. I thought Ronda was going to take it. This is going to continue the program building from here on, and that's cool. We'll see what happens next for Charlotte. And if Ronda's still in that title picture or if she's taking a break, I don't know what her plans are. I haven't read and found out if she's sticking around for a while or if she's gone. But we'll see what happens come SmackDown. So rolling it back to the match of the night, in my opinion, was Seth Rollins versus a mystery opponent of Mr. McMahon's choosing, which rumors across the internet were all pretty much dead on, and everybody knew who it was going to be. They were chanting his name way before he became out. But it was still when that music did hit, it hit different because I don't think anybody expected it to be the AEW music, right? Because that song is a direct dig at the McMahons, right? Wrestling has more than one royal family is how it starts off, right? And when that hit and you hear that quote and then the lyrics of the song and he rises up from the stage his whole entrance from AEW, his whole persona, they announce him as the American Nightmare. They even use the inflection of the announcing that they did in AEW, the American Nightmare, that whole thing. It was surreal. And it was like Corey Graves, I think it was, said it best that it hasn't sunk in fully. As if you're watching the match, you're halfway through this match, it hasn't sunk in fully that Cody Rhodes is wrestling at WrestleMania in a WWE ring. It doesn't feel real. And it was just this amazing moment. And Cody was better than he had ever been in the WWE, and he was fantastic. I don't care. You can be haters. I've always been a Cody fan. I've always thought Cody had the potential to be a top level star. His broken mirror, whatever that gimmick was called, I thought that was phenomenal. Everything you gave him, he turned into gold. He had this little dig at Stardust through the match. He did the cartwheel and the star thing, poking fun at his former gimmicks and all that stuff. I think he's a top tier talent, and I think he's fantastic in the ring. There was an interview that he did where he truly believes he is the best wrestler bell to bell. I don't know that that's the case, and there are a lot of great wrestlers and great entertainers, great overall performers, but I think he's definitely in that conversation, right? And I think he showed it here. He pulled out every single thing in his repertoire, and they also did the finish like he had been doing in AEW before he left. The hitting 3 crossroads and just like cementing that win, like definitive win over Seth freaking Rollins. And Seth freaking Rollins is one of the absolute best in the business. But these two stole the show. This was a fantastic match. This was a fantastic first showing for Cody Rhodes in his return to WWE. It was on the grandest stage of them all, as they say, and it was worthy of it, in my opinion. So, closing out the show, we, of course, had the KO show, the WrestleMania version of the KO show, Kevin Owens with Stone Cold Steve Austin coming on the show. And lo and behold, Kevin Owens wants a no-holds-barred fight with Stone Cold Steve Austin. And for the first time in 19 years, Stone Cold Steve Austin is wrestling a match. Now, when I first heard it was no-holds-barred, I'm thinking, okay, this makes sense, right? If Stone Cold is going to do a match, it's going to be like Sting, right? When Sting comes back and he does a match, it's usually no disqualification, hardcore, whatever you want to call it, because you don't have to take a whole lot of bumps with that. It's usually just a bunch of walking around, hitting each other with things, maybe a couple of clotheslines, body slams, a couple of bumps here and there. But Sting decides, to throw himself off a thing through 4 tables or whatever. Okay, these guys are crazy, but yeah. So I envision that they talked about Steve's knees and his neck and his back, and he hasn't wrestled in 19 years. And Stone Cold talks about how his first match was in Dallas. He lost his last match in WWE 19 years ago. And how fitting it would be to have his last match in Dallas. So this match is happening. And it's just like, okay, Cody Rhodes is back. Stone Cold is wrestling at WrestleMania. What in the world is going on this year? This is just insane, right? So that's what happened. They had a knockdown, drag-out fight, but it wasn't just walking around and punching and kicking each other. Yes, it started like that. Yes, there was that. Yes, there was hitting each other with objects and that kind of thing. Driving Kevin Owens up the ramp on the ATV, that all that good stuff. But Stone Cold took bumps. He took 2 suplexes outside the ring, and that's a pretty big bump. I mean, it's a protected bump because Kevin's controlling the momentum, and you're a little protected on the landing, but still a pretty hard bump for a dude that hasn't wrestled for 19 years, that's over 50, and that has shot knees, back, and neck, right? So it was insane. And so Stone Cold closed out the show after winning, almost getting beat with a stunner, which was just wow. Okay, they went there, and but yeah, Stone Cold pulled out the win and drank a bunch of beers to close out night 1 of WrestleMania. So it was a really stacked card. I thought this was when you stack up all the matches versus each other from night 1 and night 2, I think this was probably the stronger night. But there were a lot of good things that happened on night 2 as well. So, without further ado, let's go on to WrestleMania Night 2, WrestleMania Sunday. And we're going to talk about that. I was hoping the Street Profits would pull out the win in this tag match for the Raw Tag Team titles against Riddle and Orton and the Alpha Academy. But they didn't. It was your typical triple threat match, all the moves. Montez, every time he does that leap over the corner, over the turnbuckle onto the guy, it's just insane to watch, especially when they do that angle where you're looking straight at the turnbuckle and he's flying right at the camera. That dude is inhuman, seriously. The height that he gets on everything is just insane. So, I mean, just really solid match. And then you had that whole bit with Gable Stevenson and Chad Gable. I was kind of honestly hoping that he would join Alpha Academy because you can do Gable and Gable, right? But I guess we're going to do Gable and Gable against each other. We'll see what Gable Stevenson has to offer in the actual ring. We haven't seen him wrestle yet, so looking forward to that. I did forget to mention, I think on night one, Stephanie came out and introduced him. To start the show on night two, Triple H came out and said thank you, and welcome to WrestleMania and all that. So that was good, and then left his boots in the ring, traditional signature move of someone retiring, taking off the boots, and it was kind of sad but understandable, and yeah, it was a cool moment. Didn't take a whole lot of time. Didn't take away from the spectacle of everything. Just said thank you and left. And much respect to Triple H for that. So we had Lashley versus Omos, which we will talk about this when we talk about Raw. Interesting things happen. These are two big dudes. As Simon Miller from What Culture would say, these are two meaty men slapping man meat, or however he says it, something to that effect. And that's what this was. This was two big men just throwing each other around. And ultimately, Bobby Lashley got the better of Omos, took him off his feet, speared him down, took him out, even suplexed him at one point, but beat the big man. And proving once again that Bobby Lashley is almighty, right? Knoxville and Zayn, more enjoyable than I thought it would be. This is one of those, and I even walked away and made food during half this match. But this was one of those matches that it's just going to be good celebrity fun, right? And there was a bunch of shenanigans. You had the whole team come out with Knoxville and Wee Man and etc. More butt cheeks than I really wanted to see. But that all that was going on. Giant mouse traps for the win. But it was a fun, entertaining match. I have to say, it was a nice break in the monotony, and then you get into a more serious match with the women's tag team titles as Sasha and Naomi challenge against three other teams. The champs, of course, Queen Zelina and Carmella, the most beautiful woman in all of WWE. As I'm not making fun. I'm trying to mimic, but it was a poor job of doing that. But anyway, also the Queen of Hearts and the Queen of Spades, Natalya and Shayna Baszler, and Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan. And all these teams are great, right? And, well, Zelina and Carmella, they're not really gelling well. Again, we'll talk about that on Raw. But, yeah, Sasha and Naomi pull out the win here with a great-looking double-team finisher where Naomi is holding her opponent upside down by the legs, wheelbarrow style, and Sasha does this rolling thunder type thing and jumps up and does a backstabber, but on the front. So just like a kind of a chest breaker, if you will, for the win. They are your new champions. And there was this picture going across Twitter of Naomi and Sasha and Bianca all holding their titles. And that's a really cool moment that of the four major women's titles in WWE, three of them, the two tag titles and the Raw Women's Championship, are held by black women simultaneously. And that's really cool. And that's a great accomplishment. All three of these women are phenomenal athletes. They deserve all these accolades. We know them. Sasha Banks, next level, right? Naomi, underserved, I think. She is so talented in that ring. She's one of my favorites as well. All three of these ladies are my favorites. I would have been happy if Rhea and Liv had won as well. I'm really liking this pairing, which kind of makes me sad coming into Raw. But we'll talk about that again when we get to Raw. And, Natalya and Shayna, that's a team up that I didn't expect, but it makes perfect sense, and I like it. So, moving on. I'm going to skip the next match because I think it is match of the night. much like Seth and Cody. I will come back to that, but skipping ahead, New Day in a very short match against Rich Holland and Sheamus. The only thing I really want to say about this match is props to Xavier and Kofi for the Big E tribute with the gear. That was cool. Didn't expect that. I didn't know. I was like really curious what they're going to do, because New Day always goes big for WrestleMania presentation with their outfits and their entrance, and I didn't know what they were going to do, and they came out with the Big E outfits, and that was cool. That was a really cool tribute, but a really short match. I don't think they got enough time. All four of these guys, or all five if you include Butch. And by the way, the interview with Xavier, I think it was night one pre-show, kickoff show, where he said if Butch gets involved, he'll be done. I love that little nod to Pete Dunne, his former name. But yeah, they just didn't get enough time. But it was fine. It is what it is. But then we have Pat McAfee and Austin Theory. Not going to say a whole lot about this, except for Pat McAfee is one of these guys. He comes in from another world, NFL, but this package that they showed before his match, showing his journey and his passion for wrestling, made me a fan of the guy. If I wasn't already, I was already a fan of his commentary. It's so weird because in NXT, I hated the guy, and he was really good at making you hate him. But on Smackdown, as an announcer, he's like one of my favorite announcers in the business. He's so good and so energetic and just unique, right? His delivery. So seeing that package and seeing that this guy is passionate about wrestling, that's like, okay, I believe this now. I believe you. And he gets in there and he shows us that he cares about this. And that leap to the top rope, I mean, that's some next level athleticism. You see people like Shelton Benjamin pull that off. Seth Rollins is another one that does that kind of leap. Don't see that. Kurt Angle used to run up the ropes, but the full leap, the full extension, and getting there and doing that suplex, he showed some real skill here and showed that he really been putting in the work, and I think that's really cool. Gets his revenge on Austin Theory, but then challenges Vince McMahon, and I'm like, where the heck is this going? And it didn't dawn on me at first. And it should have been obvious where this was headed, but obviously Vince McMahon gets in there. He's jaw jacking. He takes his jacket off. Dude's still jacked. You know, obviously he's older, not quite as firm as he used to be, but the man's very, very well seasoned, as it were. But you know, I wish I had his arms. That's all I'm saying. But yeah, so he gets in there. Obviously, Austin Theory gets involved. Vince gets the win. I don't mind it. I don't care about that. I don't. I know there's been some hate. Why did Vince McMahon have to pin him? Why did he have to show him up? Whatever. It is what it is. It was to lead into the next thing, which Vince unfortunately kind of gave away when Austin Theory's music hit, and he kind of jumped like because he thought it was, and then it dawned on me. It's like, oh, Stone Cold coming out, isn't he? So, of course, then the glass shatters and Stone Cold comes out, and you have the worst stunner in history happen as Stone Cold laughs it off. But they tried. These guys are getting up there. Vince McMahon, again, very well seasoned. Really has no business being active in a wrestling ring at this point. But he tried. He wanted to give the fans that moment, and we got it. As sad as it may have been, as funny. And I like Noelle Foley's reaction. She posted a video of her reaction to this as she's watching him get stunned, and she's like laughing. And then as he falls to his knees as he gets stunned, she goes, "Oh no!" Like she felt so bad for the man, and I thought that was hilarious. That was the best reaction to this stunner that I have seen. So that was, but it was a moment. It was a WrestleMania moment, and I'm glad it happened. I just hope he's okay. And yeah, so going back to the match that I think stole the night, which was Edge versus AJ Styles. And this was a match that a lot of people were anticipating, a lot of people talking about. This was a dream match. And I compare this directly to Seth versus Cody because the styles, no pun intended, are very similar. So AJ and Seth are very similar in their techniques, their styles. They're more high flying, but they're both strong. They're both well rounded. And then you have Edge and Cody, who are a little bit stronger, a little bit more methodical, but still can pull out all those big moves, those surprising moves that defy their size and speed beyond their bulk and that kind of stuff. Not saying like Edge is a big bulky dude, but they are bigger. Like Edge is like 6'6" or something like that. He's a big dude, but he can fly around when he needs to. But they're more of a traditional, not even traditional, because I don't know how you describe them. They're in a category all of their own, but they're similar. And then AJ and Seth are similar. So the contrast of AJ and Edge is very similar to the contrast of Seth and Cody. And on both nights, these two pairings stole the show. Edge and AJ are two of the absolute best. AJ Styles is one of my all-time favorites, as a matter of fact. Actually, I just remembered I have an action figure of AJ somewhere. I got to find that thing. It's still in the box. I should have brought that out and put it up. But yeah, AJ is one of my all-time favorites. Edge is, coming back from what he did and competing at the level that he is. This was a dream match, and they put on a clinic in that ring, and ultimately Edge pulls out the victory because of a distraction from Damian Priest. I was very intrigued by this. It's like, is this the new Ministry? Is this the new Brood? What is this? What is this pairing? And it kind of explained why Edge went dark if they were planning on this from the beginning. But these two stole the show. But we cannot undersell the main event. I have not looked at reports, so I don't know. And so if you do know, leave a comment below, or I'll look it up after this recording. It appeared to me, and it appeared to a lot of people, that Roman legit got hurt with his shoulder, and he seemed to still be wincing on Raw. So I don't know if he did pull it out of socket, because there was one point where he was down on the mat right before the match ended, where he was down on the mat and Paul Heyman was screaming at him, "My Tribal Chief," and you could hear him audibly saying, "My arm, it's out, it's out, it's out." And I really wonder if he was like saying, "Dude, I got in this match, my arm is out," and because it ended right after that, very abruptly. But this was what you expect from a Roman Reigns Brock Lesnar match. It's very similar to matches they've had recently. You start off with the suplexes, you start off with the spears. Brock even pulled out the Kimura, which is kayfabe where it happened, but I think it happened before that. But yeah, it was typical Brock and Roman back and forth, pulling all their big moves, Superman punches, etc., etc. Thankfully, the Usos did not get involved with this one, but of course Heyman did. There were low blows and hits with the title belt, that kind of thing, shenanigans. Roman's the hill, makes sense. But ultimately, right after he's like down saying his arm's out, he gets up, spears Brock for the win, 1, 2, 3. Roman is reunified. Universal WWE Champion, whatever they're going to call this unified belt, if they are going to make it one belt. I guess we'll have to wait till Smackdown to find that out, and you'll hear why on the Raw talk. But yeah, so it was a fine match, and it went the way I kind of hoped. I'm wearing a Roman Reigns shirt. I'm a Roman Reigns guy. I've always been a Roman Reigns guy. I think he is in the spot he's always deserved, and I am acknowledging Roman Reigns. You're the champ. You're the man. You're standing at the top of the hill, and all your accolades were listed out on Raw. But yeah, that is your WrestleMania Night 2. Overall, I think this was a really good WrestleMania, the best WrestleMania from start to finish in recent memory. Honestly, it was a really strong, stacked card, a lot of great matches. You had multiple celebrities involved. You had different spots. You had the comedic spots with Knoxville. You had the heartwarming spots, Cody returning, Naomi and Sasha winning, Bianca getting her redemption. You had your standout matches with Edge and AJ and Seth Rollins and Cody. You had your legend return with Stone Cold. You had the Hall of Fame with The Undertaker and the Steiners. It was a fantastic WrestleMania weekend. I have to say this is one of the best WrestleManias I've watched in years, honestly. So let's talk about that Raw after WrestleMania. So, usually the Raw after WrestleMania is this big spectacle. All these things happen. Like, people debut, people return. It's a big deal. Then we had this Raw. Not as much, honestly. So, takeaways. Are Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan breaking up? They had a contenders match against Sasha and Naomi, who used that double team move to pin Liv and ultimately win. Rhea shrugs off Liv, walks away, and I'm like, man, she just does not like being in tag teams, does she? Later on in the night, we find out that she's gone to Pearson and DeVille and gotten their title match anyway. So they're going to have the title match next week. But I'm suspicious. I think she's going to turn on Liv and turn heel. And I don't know why they're doing that. I don't understand that. I like this pairing. I think they work together. And, what else are you going to do with them? You're not going to put them in the title picture. So unless Rhea's going to go up against Bianca, which I would love to see that. But I don't know. I have a bad feeling about this tag team, and I was really enjoying this tag team. They've barely been together, and they're already going to break them up. But we know how WWE feels about tag team wrestling. So, I'm worried about that. Cody, of course, started the show as expected, as he should have. Impassioned speech. He's brought to tears several times talking about Dusty Rhodes. He's done interviews about this recently that were released after his appearance at WrestleMania, talking about this. And basically, it's this dream that he had to win the world title for Dusty. Doesn't get to show Dusty that title, give it to him, put it in his hands officially, but he wants to win it for him, for the people, for himself. And that was his dream. And he talked about how it was an easy decision to come back to WWE because of that dream. And I understand that. If you have a dream, a lifelong dream, he came up in the WWE system. He didn't go on the indies. He went on the indies after he left WWE and made a name for himself, made himself undeniable, as the moniker goes, undesirable to undeniable. And now he's here for the world title. And interesting handshake between him and Seth. Obviously, that story's not done, but I'm looking forward to Cody going for that title, and I want to see that strap around his waist. So, good opening for Raw. Bianca came out later, did a speech as well, talked about how she's become better through this whole experience. Becky made her better by beating her and showing her how quickly things can fall, you can lose things, and things can go away in 26 seconds, as it were, at SummerSlam. But now she's on top, and she's going to challenge every single person in the back. She wants to be a fighting champion. That whole thing. She is the EST of WWE. I expected a debut or a challenge at this point, but we got nothing. No challengers. Nobody came out. Becky wasn't even there. Interesting direction to go with that. So just a speech from Bianca, and that was done. The only real return we had was when Kevin Owens was coming out making excuses for why he lost, and this guy named Ezekiel's music hits, and Ezekiel walks to the ring, and Ezekiel gets in the ring, and Kevin looks him right in the eye and says, "Aren't you Elias?" And his reply, this is Elias. His reply was, "I'm not Elias. I'm Elias's younger brother, Ezekiel." We're going full soap opera, comic book gear, whatever you want to call this. Elias has shaved his beard. He's cut his hair. He's wearing traditional wrestling gear, short tights, all that. And he is now called Ezekiel. And he is Elias's younger brother. And that's all we got. That's it. Nothing else happened. No explanation. Just Elias is back under a new name and a new look, and we don't know why. Okay. Interesting. Miz fights Dominic, destroys Dominic in short fashion, and nothing. No mic time, no Logan Paul, no mention of what happened. There was like a reference from commentary, but nothing. He just wins and leaves. Okay. So then we had the NXT title defended on Monday Night Raw. Dolph Ziggler rematch against Braun Breaker. very similar sequence to events as played out in Stand and Deliver. Same distraction, same leave over the top rope, same super kick. The only difference is Braun Breaker's head did not go into the exposed turnbuckle like it did on Stand and Deliver, so he was able to kick out, pulled out his very impressive spear, and a few Steiner lines. And by the way, they did reference him as Rick Steiner's son and Scott Steiner's nephew, which I appreciated. Now can we just call him Braun Steiner, please? But I don't care. Whatever. Everybody knows he's a Steiner. It's undeniable, and now they're acknowledging it, so that's cool. Happy about that. But he wins. He is now your NXT champion for the second time. So that's going to be interesting. Now he's going to go into Tuesday night with the NXT title, and we'll see how that plays out. MVP is out. Talks about how Bobby Lashley didn't need him to defeat Omos. Brings him out. Omos comes out, rematch, and the unthinkable happens. MVP Paul Heyman, Bobby Lashley. He turned on him and went with his competitor, Omos. I thought maybe this was going to be the new Hurt Business or whatever, a new faction. They were going to bring Omos into the fold. But instead, he turns on Bobby Lashley, who honestly still needs some work on the mic, but in the ring, he's fantastic. And they're going full face with him. Omos is the heel, and it makes sense, but it's a weird direction to go with these guys. We're obviously continuing this program with Omos and Lashley. Maybe we're getting Lashley versus MVP at some point. I don't know, but okay, we'll see what happens there. Zelina and Carmella are supposed to have a match, but Zelina calls Carmella out and says she's the one that cost them the titles, and then beats the crap out of her. And this is followed up with, I call it a makeout session, but that would be very greatly underselling it between Corey Graves and Carmella. There was a lot, and I mean a lot of tongue. That's all I'm going to say about that. Usos and Theory teaming up once again, this time to take on RK Bro and Finn Balor. Now, remember, Finn Balor lost twice on SmackDown, was not even on WrestleMania. Now he's in this six-man tag team match, and he loses again. The United States champion, Finn Balor, first ever Universal champion, loses 3 times in a row WrestleMania weekend into Monday. Friday to Monday, 3 times. And not even on WrestleMania. I don't know how to feel about that. So I'm just going to leave that there. Let that hang in the air. Edge and Damian Priest. So I said earlier I was intrigued by this pairing, by this direction. New ministry, new brood, whatever this is, whatever they're doing with these two. Interesting. Could be cool. Dark. And then this explanation occurs, and I I don't even know what this was. Honestly, it was kind of cheesy, if I'm being completely honest. Edge is like, Damian, tell me what about my message appealed to you? And Damian's like, you were speaking to me, so I had no choice but to follow you. And they're just like, buddy. This was weird. This was almost comical. It was borderline comical. And it just didn't feel like it should have felt to me personally. I'll give it time, see where it goes. I'm not going to hate on it completely. I'm just saying it didn't sell me on the alliance as well as it should have. Seeing these two together and seeing the dark turn Edge is taken to go a more comical, more laid back, more lackadaisical route just felt underwhelming a little bit. So, but then AJ comes out and they beat the crap out of AJ as expected. After AJ gets a few shots in on both of them as well. But now who's going to come to AJ's rescue? Who's going to be his partner? He's got to have a backup, right? So who's that going to be? It's going to be interesting to see who that is. But we don't see that here. Texas Tornado match, Street Profits, Alpha Academy, not really much to say about that. Roman closes the show by standing in the middle of the ring, letting Paul Heyman list out all the accolades of the Bloodline, how many tickets they've sold, how big the box office has been, $1 billion deals, large crowds, record-breaking stats for Roman Reigns, etc., etc. Roman Reigns, acknowledge me. You want to know what's next? Watch Smackdown. And that's your Raw after WrestleMania. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Raw after WrestleMania is usually the biggest Raw of the year. This is where you reset. You bring in new people. You elevate people from NXT. You have big challenges. You have title changes. You have big things happening. And we got none of that. Absolutely none of that. Now, my only thought as to why that may be is that SmackDown is the A show now. And maybe they are trying to gear people to SmackDown, to get them to watch SmackDown. So now the SmackDown after WrestleMania is going to be the show to watch. We'll see what happens on SmackDown and see if that is the case, see if that is true, or see if this is just they had no plan for after WrestleMania, and now we're back into this holding pattern stage. We'll see what happens. I'm crossing my fingers for positive things to happen, for big debuts, big things to happen on SmackDown.
Hey, would you like to get a free comic book based on All Elite Wrestling? And in the process, get more updates about what's coming from the Allcast? You can do so by going to subscribepage.com/freeAEWcomic, and just by signing up for the Allcast newsletter, you'll get a free fan comic from comic creator Todd Black. Check it out at subscribepage.com/freeAEWcomic today.
Hopefully you enjoyed this episode of the Allcast, the inaugural relaunch of the Allcast. And going forward, I don't know what the exact schedule of the show is going to be, but I will keep you updated. You can follow social media at the Allcast across Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook for updates on that, or you can check out allpodcast.com, which currently will take you straight to this YouTube channel. Please like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss anything. Hit that notification bell as well. So with that said, until next time, keep watching wrestling, and at the risk of stealing from The Miz, stay awesome.